Shah. Fahad is from the Valley. His main role at the moment is a journalist. He's an editor of an website, Kashmirwala. He participated actually in the struggle within the Valley itself before he came over to the UK. I've actually read part of, not all of the book, but I've read quite a bit of it actually, and it's a beautiful book which really narrates by different authors, different participants in the struggle of, over the last 15 or 20 years. And I highly recommend it that you should get hold of the book, because if you look at it, I mean, the Valley at the moment, there's something like 500,000 Indian troops, on top of the border security forces. I mean, there's probably, some people have said that there's a soldier for every 4 or 5 people within the Valley, and that's the situation really. It's a brutal military occupation with over 100,000 people being killed. Over 10,000 people are still disappeared. No one knows what happened to them, or the relatives and families are still waiting to hear. The children who've been made orphan, and there's countless other brutalities are happening. But despite the brutal repression, the movement, is just surprising everybody. It's coming back and hitting the Indian state, again and again and again. And that point we just making earlier on, that it's lying by donkeys, and that really applies, I think, in the Valley really. But over to you, Fahad.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. I wouldn't do that harsh that it's lions led by donkeys as you do. I don't go with that statement. But I will talk about my book. The book started as a part of the process which has started with people in Kashmir that, like earlier, before 90s, you would have seen the journalists coming to Kashmir mostly being from India or being from outside India. But what happened with the 90s movement is that it sparked this thing in people of Kashmir that they have to tell their own stories. So since 1996, and after that, the people in Kashmir started becoming journalists and then started becoming writers. And as you may know, that there are only few books internationally known on Kashmir written by Kashmiris, which is one is by Fahad Shah and another is by Mirza Wali last year, and then there is another book by Siddharth Vibu, The Garden of Solitude. He's a Kashmiri Pandit and he wrote a book as a memoir of what happened with the Pandits. And then there is another anthology by Sanjay Kar, Until My Freedom Has Come, and this is the last book which has come on Kashmir in last year. So what was the purpose of this book was mostly to move beyond 2010. Mostly the incidents, like the focus of the book was beyond 2010, as like most of you may know that there was an armed movement going on from 90s, and late 90s it was at a decline, and then in early 2000s it started again emerging as a main part of the movement, with the inclusion of when Lashkar started becoming popular in Kashmir, with their coming into Kashmir and the suicide bombings and everything. But in late 2000s, again, it started getting towards the decline. Like now, we can say that militancy has been in decline just a few years ago. I'll go to that later, but why it's not now. In 2008, when the resistance started and the mass protesters by the people started with the issue of the Amarnath land road, and around 80 people were killed in 4 months by the Indian police or the military or the forces, whatever they are, which, as you said, are around more than 500,000 forces in all of Jammu and Kashmir, which includes all the forces, police, CRPF and everything. And then there are 2 major laws in Kashmir, which is Public Safety Act, which still applies there, and then there is Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which gives Indian forces or any forces right to either kill you or to enter your house or to arrest you, anything, and they cannot be prosecuted. And it's on the record that none of the Indian forces have been prosecuted ever so far. There was a case last year, Patribal fake encounter, and that case went to the Supreme Court of India, and the CBI had declared that it was a cold murder of civilians, but then the court ruled out that the that the army has two choices, whether they should deal this in the trial in the court, or they should have in their own court, in the army court. Yeah. So then they did in the army court, and then they said the verdict was that we don't have enough evidence to prove that these were the murders committed by the army. So what is in this book is that after 2008, there was this young generation in Kashmir which was born around early 90s and late 80s, around 87, 88, and I'm from the same generation as me, you can guess, I'm not that old. So I'm from the same generation which was born around late 80s to early 90s, who have not seen the Kashmir which was before 90s when there was no violence. They don't know how Kashmir looked without army, how it was during 1950s. We have always heard it from our parents or grandfathers and mother or father that how it used to be like. We used to walk on Band, which is the bank of the river Jhelum, and there used to be no military. And now if you will walk, you will see army members on like every 100 or 200 meters. And no checkpoints or identity card checks. So we started seeing this, like I remember myself, the first time I remember is 96 elections. I do remember what happened in 96 elections, like how army used to enter into houses and then force you to cast your vote. So this generation didn't pick up guns like the previous generation in the 90s. What they did, they chose different mediums to follow the same path. Like, there are different ways now. As you can see, the internet is widespread all over the world. They started using social media. They started using the creative paths to say the same thing which the previous generation had been saying. They started using videos, filmmaking, poetry, music, and writing, anything that was there available, which is a creative medium, or paintings and everything. But also one of the important was stone throwing, which became popular from 2008, because during 2008 it was all about stone throwing. It was like 1,000 young boys against 10,000 army with guns, and they were just stones. And they were killed. 80 people were killed in 2008. And then 2009, nothing happened. State said that it's all peaceful and everything. And 2010, it again happened. There was mass protesters again, in which more than 120 people, mostly teenagers, school-going students, were killed by the forces during these protesters. And then also it was all about stone throwing and these creative mediums like resistance of art, which we mostly call it in Kashmir. So this generation didn't want to pick up guns. They thought that the world is changing now. It's more like a peaceful resistance can help us to do the same things, to get justice for the people who have been killed, or for the rights we demand from the state, and for the bigger goal, which is mostly the popular sentiment in Kashmir from the people, is right to self-determination, which almost every leader and every resistance group accepts, that the major goal is the right to self-determination, that people should be given right to choose whatever they want to decide, which has never been given. So this generation, and this book is the same. It is the same thing, like we wanted to bring these things into it. Like this book has a piece written by a stone thrower whose name is not, only his first name is in the book because of his security. So I wanted to bring his version of how he sees Kashmir and how he throws stones and why he throws stones. Because we never heard something like that, stone throwing, 10 years ago. And there's another piece by a grave digger, Ata Muhammad, who says he has buried more than 230 people in unmarked graves, which no one knows who the people are. I must tell you that the human rights groups have found that there are more than 7,000 unmarked graves so far found in around 5 districts of Jammu and Kashmir, and there may be more, and nothing has been done to that. The rights group demanded that the DNA testing should be done with the graves so that we find who the people are, but the Indian government said that we don't have enough resources to do the DNA testing. So, and this book has focused on, like the introduction is about what happened after 2010, in 2011, in 2012, how police and the state deal with the people, like the young people who use Facebook as a medium of resistance, how they were arrested, intimidated, how stone throwers were tortured. And there's a little bit of history to go back, what happened before 1990s. And then there's some parts about the Kashmiri Pandits, and then some of the versions of how people from outside see Kashmir who have been working on Kashmir, someone from US and someone from Ireland, India. So this is the book mostly about. And I would like to read a part of it, which is from the introduction, which will give sense why this book was important and what was it. Kashmir is the most unreported place on earth. An editor of a magazine I was working with told me once. I did not understand what he meant initially. After pondering over it for a while, I did glean the essence of the statement. There are a variety of stories about the people of Kashmir, some known to locals, some alien to even well-read residents. These narratives can be gathered from almost every newspaper, magazine or news channel. But the real stories within the region, the stories that are close to the Kashmiri people's hearts, are not often revealed in the media. This book is an attempt at going beyond that barrier. As a child, I wasn't inclined towards writing. I did not dream of becoming a journalist or a writer. The only thing I actively pursued during my childhood, which now strikes me as an innate desire to preserve memory, was keeping a diary. I used to cut photographs from newspapers of people killed and placed them in a black cover book gifted to me by a friend. I would then note the date and the biographical details of the slain person. My father found the diary one day and forced me to remove the pictures, as the Indian forces used it to search houses during crackdowns. All the photographs that I had painstakingly saved were removed. My mother also tells me of a photograph that was shot just outside our house. In that picture, she tells me I was staying with the then young rebels who had a hideout in our neighborhood. I did not get to see the picture. My mother says that someone destroyed it when curfew became a regular affair. I later learned that my family had expunged the photograph, and if they hadn't, the forces would have. What is memory? It's a recording of the past. It's what we remember of the things we think or feel or hear. The picture that was destroyed was a memory captured on film, but there are more potent recording instruments. The human brain is like the film used in a camera. As the film is exposed to light, the brain is exposed to scenes of light, which it then captures. This film cannot be destroyed unless our brain stops functioning. The book contains a collection of several such films. It's a compilation of numerous writers' interpretations of the valley, of their experiences in the valley. While most people have a complex tapestry or reminiscences, both joyous and sorrowful, in a place like Kashmir, which has been engulfed in a war for decades now, there are few happy recollections. However, no matter the pain, preserving these remembrances is all that Kashmiris can think of doing for their future generations. After years or decades, the generations that are yet to come will need a medium through which they can know what happened to their ancestors. In this collection, the people of Kashmir narrate their stories. Few non-Kashmiris have also been included, whose keen understanding of the valley gives a sense of the knotty socio-political situation. Additionally, there are few pieces from the online magazine, The Kashmirwala, and Independent Voices of Kashmir since May 2011. It has been a long journey collecting these narratives and arranging them such that they highlight key aspects of the Kashmir conflict. The stories look at every facet of life in the valley, the stolen childhoods of those born into conflict zones, the existence of youngsters in a state with strict curfews, their plummet all too soon into adulthood as they live strikes, crackdowns, killings, and beatings at the hands of the Indian forces. While recording these voices, the anthology does not judge, rather it conveys what has happened in the valley, what still unfolds every passing day, and what the people want. On the night I was writing the concluding parts of this introduction, I was in touch with a young boy who had been in jail for months under the Draconian Public Safety Act and had been released only a month ago. I messaged him all night, and his response strengthened my conviction on the need for this collection. The young boy wrote, "What is so good about this night when you don't know who is coming to get you in the night crackdown?"
Now, I think that's a powerful powerful, very short really, but still very powerful. Again, I want to stress really that people should actually, if they are interested in the book, leave your contact details and we'll try to get the book to you really as soon as possible. It's a must read really. But I think a lot of people know Shamus really, his personal journey, but very few here know Fahad, your personal journey really. And I think it would be interesting to, for everybody here really, just to get a glimpse of that how, in terms of your, when you became active or say about your role in it, particularly, in 2008 into the 10 and 12 movement.
Yes. Well, I'm by profession I'm a journalist now. I can't go into a lot of stuff as you may know because of the profession, but I would like to tell some things about life. Like we in Kashmir in the valley live in such circumstances that you are not away from politics. Everything you do is politics, you say is politics. Even if you go to the shopkeeper, you discuss politics. You go to buy bread, you discuss politics. You're in a bus, you discuss politics. There is nothing, no moment in a day where you won't talk about politics, where you won't say at least one thing like Sheikh Abdullah was wrong or he was right or whatever. You are like, your exposure to politics is as early as you come to senses to see life around you. Like I said, I know things since '96. That was the first day when I thought, oh, something is happening here. We are not living in a normal place. And then again and again, living in Kashmir has not been that easy because of the things the state and the forces does. Like you go to school and you have to stop because there's an encounter going on, and you are in between the fighting. And you're traveling somewhere, the army comes and they tell you to get down from the bus and show your ID cards. Like I have written about this, I was in class 9 and the army took us down from the bus and they should show ID cards. Now, who can carry an ID card when he's in class 9, like a teenager? Nobody does that, we're just having fun, but no, they started beating us. So that's how life in Kashmir has been, with the crackdowns, curfews, and all these things put something in you, in your mind and your heart to do something. There are ways to do things, to respond to such a situation. Like some people pick up guns, and some people are writing, some people are making art, or some people are joining politics. So I chose writing over other things which I could have done. Or maybe I did, like before, when I was in school, everybody used to throw stones, and of course I did too, no doubt. But then it changed slowly and slowly. I thought writing is the way I should do it. And in 2009, I started journalism, working as a journalist in a newspaper in Kashmir, which is Greater Kashmir. That was the first newspaper I worked with. And then slowly and slowly the journey began. After another newspaper, then another work, then started writing for other publications outside Kashmir, then after that outside India also. And in that process, in the media, I found different difficulties working in this mainstream media center. I thought, no, this is not the way how I want to do journalism. And then that's how the website came into being in 2010. One of my friends, who's a mutual friend, Chams and me, he helped me to create the website in 2010 from here in London. And then in 2011, the magazine became the first alternative magazine in 2011. The website became the magazine in 2011. And since then it has been covering Kashmir and other parts also. It has been 3 years now. And it was the first of its kind, and that's how it got such a recognition and people started reading it. And that's how the book came into being. I got the book project, and then I worked on this book since 2012 and 2013, and it came last year. So as a journalist, in life in Kashmir is very uncertain. You don't know how, there are different invisible things which you can't see, but they are there. What you have to report, how you have to report. There are different things, how state tries to intimidate you, or there are different people who try to force you to not do certain things. And that's how the journalism in a place like Kashmir, conflict in Kashmir, shapes up. And then some people try to compromise, some people don't, some people are like killed, as may around a dozen of people have been killed, and several journalists have been attacked in Kashmir. But I missed one point when I was talking that what is happening in Kashmir right now. That after the 2010, when the Indian state couldn't do anything, they didn't prosecute the people who were accused of killing in 2010. So since last 2 years and last 1 year, these people who were throwing stones in 2010, a lot of them have picked up gun now. A lot of them were killed in 2013. Like, I was almost into everyone's funeral because of covering as a journalist. And all those people were throwing stones in 2008 and 2010. And there are like recordings, they saying that nothing is going to happen to Kashmir now because we tried everything and we should take a plan again. And just yesterday I was reading the news that in South Kashmir there's rise in the militancy again, young people are joining militancy. And they are as young as 18, 19, 20 and they are dropping college and joining militancy. So that's how it's shaping. It can turn to a bad situation like it was in 90s and it can go out of control. Of course, there are not so many resources like there were in 90s, but it can change certain things in Kashmir politics. And that shouldn't have happened. It should have been like the peaceful resistance. But it's also a fact that the Kashmir, the whole of the movement hasn't achieved anything till now. There are laws there, this PSA, AFSPA, we have just, only PSA has been amended last year because of the amnesty pressure. Nothing has been achieved, people are still in jail, people are still disappeared, there are ways, and it's only what this whole process is now is all the recordings of those things, documenting the history, which may be eroded maybe tomorrow or day after, but anyone can come and remove all the graveyards, you don't have anything, remove all the symbols. That what is left is only the literature or the documents you have. That's how we speak of 1947 now. Otherwise, we don't have any symbol in Kashmir which can tell you Sheikh Abdullah was here or this is a symbol of 1947. There's nothing. So these things, like I as a journalist believe the writing and talking and documenting things is the most important part right now which we can do.
There's a couple of questions really follow because I'm conscious of one of the things this evening. Just really following on the point you made at the end in terms of increasing militancy and looking towards armed insurrection with Buddha and as a salvation of the war. I mean, we saw in the 80s, particularly in the 90s actually, that the secular nationalist insurrection being replaced by more fundamentalist jihadi insurrection, to a large extent supported and engineered by the Pakistani state, particularly the Indian support. What direction is the new militancy going to take? Is that going towards a secular militancy, or is it still doesn't apply to jihadi?
I think it's not that big that like you can take a certain shape because everybody has their individuals have their ideology, they do something because of the ideology. The most two groups which are mostly as per the peace and as per the state functioning in Kashmir is the Hizbul and the elite. So you know both those groups have a certain ideology. But it also depends, it's the part, like this whole struggle, it's not the only struggle. In 90s, the only struggle was the gun. But right now, it's not the only struggle, it's just a part of it. So there is a big, huge movement, there's a civil society movement going on. And they are thinking about every right, everybody has the same right. There are students fighting for, there are students protesting. And it's not like one directional movement. There are a lot of directions to this movement. But in the larger perspective, there are people who are living in this atmosphere that they know that we have to engage and we have to accommodate everybody. And I think in my personal view that I don't think it's the way it was in 90s, it's not at that level now. People have moved on and it's not in that way that the way it's portrayed by India and the media that it's a fundamentalist movement and it's a pro-Pakistani, it's a jihadi Islamist movement. It's exactly not that. It's very surprising to talk to people, even in Delhi sometimes, they think that everybody of us carries guns. They think like that, oh, you're fundamentalist, you're religious fanatics and everything. It's not exactly that. Then we would have been like forced to go to mosques, I think mosque, not many people go into mosques, I can say that. It's not that fundamentalist as it is shown by the media. It's a little bit of propaganda also done by civil quarters who are benefited because of this. If Kashmir is shown as a fundamentalist Islamic fanatic movement, it will benefit to certain quarters of South Asia. Because it's a new way. That's how the United States created the war on terror. This was their first thing. After that the communists will come and they will hurt us, then they created Islamists will come and then they hurt us. So this is the whole world political scenario that same applies in Kashmir.
Following on from that, just final question before I ask people to come in. I mean, the recent elections in India and the victory of BJP, Modi in particular, and he's unsafe character's role in history, and their manifesto and the promises virtually they made in relation to Kashmir's autonomy and country. What impact is that going to have in your opinion within Kashmir?
I think it's too early to say how he's going to shape. Like we know the last BJP government before the Congress was very much interested when it was under Vajpayee, interested to in Kashmir and they were having dialogue with each other. But now the scenario across the border has changed. It's now Sheikh as he came to this swearing-in ceremony that was surprised a lot of people in Kashmir. It was really calm. So it's too early to say what he's going to do. Like we know that before elections they were saying that the Article 370 which gives some of the special status to Kashmir, we will revoke that. But now just last night I read the news that they are saying that no, we will do a structured reply to this debate of Article 370. So now they are not that open, no, we are going to revoke it the way they were before. So I don't think it will be, I think there will be dialogue between, because there are, like you have seen the reports coming in, the Kashmiri separatists in Kashmir, they are interested to talk to India. There was a letter written by Veer Zuma Farooq in one of the Indian newspapers to the people of India that we want Kashmir issue to be solved once and for all. But I don't think there will be something big, but maybe small things, and they are now aiming at the assembly elections. BJP is trying to get hold of the state structure now. They're not concerned about more towards how the central government will behave towards Kashmir. The plan for the assembly election is, which they named is 44 plus, because we have around 84 seats, and if you move beyond 44, then you will form the government. And maybe they can, because they have won 3 seats in Kashmir for the Lok Sabha election, which is quite new. Like the NC has been wiped out from the whole of Jammu and Kashmir, which used to win all the time, and it's PDP and BJP now. So the whole political situation on ground is changing. So maybe there will be a lot to say after the assembly elections, how BJP will perform in the assembly elections. That can change several things.
Just to clarify these 3 seats you know, what is the makeup of that constituency?
They want Jammu, Udhampur and Ladakh.
Who won the valley? PDP.
I find it was nice to hear the stories that you have highlighted. But I want you to shed some light on this perception that Kashmir exists only in the valley, other side of the Banal Tunnel. Starts from the Kazagan and just as Shama said, this 18 mile by 40 mile. And what about the view of the other people within the Jammu regions like Poonch, Jammu and Kashmir side? What those views of the Pali speaking and the local speakers?
I think this is the first question I have been asking the last 10 months everywhere I go. And Shamas knows about it.
Okay.
And I think it's lack of communication.
Because it's the perception that we have this.
I think it's lack of communication that has added to this perception. I think the people in the valleys think that the other side is Kashmir, so a lot of them think that it's an independent part and they are living life better than us, which you cannot disagree is quite true to some extent. There are not 500,000 troops in the other side of Kashmir. There are things going on the other side of Kashmir which are more structured and political and in a different way. But it's lack of communication, because if you see, like, there are several newspapers in Kashmir. Like if we go to the basics on the ground, if a person is at home, how does he or she get to know about a certain thing? From news. So we pick up a newspaper in Kashmir and you will see there will be 2 or 3 news items about other side of Kashmir. That too will be press releases from some political organization or for something that has happened which is quite good for tourism or something. This is the basics I am saying, the newspapers, major newspapers. And all other 16 pages of the newspaper will be about Kashmir, India, other things, world and everything. So I can say like people know more about Afghanistan politics than on the other side of Kashmir. Because this is how it works. And then on the other side of Kashmir also, I don't know, I have talked to some of the people, they also don't know certain things what happens in the valley. I think it's lack of communication which should go, and which some people are trying to remove that barrier. But now the whole internet and social media is helping to a lot of extent. Because here in London I have met a lot of people from Mirpur who are young, they know a lot of things and they are quite interested in working, and because they are connected now to people from the valley, to people from other side. I myself am connected with other side of it. And I myself didn't know a lot of things about other side of Kashmir till I became friends with Shamas or other friends. They introduced me to other people, and that's how I got to know about things. I think both the sides have to do something to remove this barrier. But the one basic thing is which a lot of people from Azad Pakistan administered Kashmir think that the people from the valley don't consider us Kashmiris. I'm telling you here that's a lie. They don't. That's a perception created, and you know who will be benefited because of that perception. If we think, you know.
Yeah, but
So it's not a fact. The people in the valley do consider everybody as like part of Kashmir, and then they're like proud of it. Like I have seen people in Kashmir saying like, oh look at Mirpur, look at this, we'll go Mirpur, we'll do this, and they fought for it to open the road in Muzaffarabad in 2010.
No,
2008, they fought for it. People died on the road when there were processions to open the road. And that can say like how much enthusiastic and passionate they are about that side of Kashmir.
I have been around the Jammu side in recent years, and this terminology that I've come across quite a lot, POK. What's reading that?
In which side?
In Jammu region.
In Jammu, that can be. Yeah. Jammu considers that.
No, but it's not just the Hindus that use this terminology. Everybody that I come across, Muslim as well as.
Because I think some of the people who will go to the facts and who are Kashmiri nationalists, they will call it POK.
We are from Mirpur, we go.
See, but
Fahad,
I got no problem with that, but it's
okay. Nazim, man.
I am on a Facebook a lot in these days. Sorry, I've got a sore throat and I can't speak much. Hi. We have noticed a lot from the valley. A lot of people are using a word like Gujars, Dogras. You valley people use those words against us. You just said it's all perception, it's nothing like that. So how come all those words we see on the social media, every other Kashmiri, a valley Kashmiri, to the other side, either it's Ladakh or Jammu or the other side, they use 2 words all the time. Oh, you are bloody Gujar, or you are a Dogra. That's what you do.
should I respond?
Yes.
Okay. Have you seen this? Have you seen the school syllabus in Kashmir? You haven't. So it starts from the basics. People in schools have been taught that there are these different sects. In the school syllabus, if you will see, there is a separate page. Dogra, Gujars, Sanskrit. There are people in Kashmir who are fighting for their rights, and they call themselves. There are groups, Gujar groups, who call themselves Gujars, and they're proud about it. Nobody alienates them from anything. There are people working in every official position. There is a man If you will look at the cultural academy, there are magazines for every sect and every language. There's a Pahadi magazine, there's a Gujjar magazine. One of the deputy directors was a Gujjar. I don't remember his name, Javed or something. And he is one of the front runners for the rights of the Gujjars. I don't think it's something like that.
But but I can tell you, like Shabir Long, a well-known guy from Srinagar, politics. He's in politics. A person like that, when they have a fights with us.
I don't know him. See,
Yeah.
he is not that popular.
Maybe. But he is a very popular on Facebook, on social media.
Maybe some, maybe
You know, it's a lot of difference. Oh, we see this a lot on a social
You
media.
have to see if this divide widens, you have to see who benefits from this.
Yeah.
So I don't think there should be more debate on why this is happening. There should be more debate on how to control this and how to divide this.
absolutely, I think I'll echo that point really. Just, I mean, similar question to the class in Nazim, more to do with, sorry.
Carry on.
But mine was, sorry, just very quickly, mine was more to do with the Ladakh and Jammu and Valley really, they're interacting with each other. How do they see each other as in
Ladakh and Jammu.
Jammu and Valley?
I think Jammu depends. Jammu consists of 10 districts of the region. It's not just Jammu is one district and then the whole division is called Jammu. If you go to Doda, Kishtwar, it's a different thing. If you go to Poonch, Rajouri, it's a different thing. If you go to Katwa, Jammu, it's a different thing. So all those people have a different thing. It's exactly the same. Jammu and Kashmir is exactly the same way the India is. If you go to South, it's entirely different. If you go to North, it's different. Central India, it's different. So how Jammu sees Kashmir politically is if you get the answers from the events. In 2008, there were people in Jammu who protested against the Kashmiris and they blocked the way and there was an economic blockade for months. People in Kashmir Valley didn't have food or medicine because the road was blocked. And they attacked Muslims in Jammu region. And then if you go to Ladakh, Ladakh politically is more towards India than to Kashmir. But it also depends. In Ladakh, if you go to Kargil, there are Muslims in Kargil. When something happens in Kashmir, they have a lot of times protested in Kargil. Because there are Muslims and then they consider themselves more towards the valley. And there was one debate in 2010, I don't in 2010 or 8, 10 or 8, yeah, when there was this debate on the state should be divided and the Chunab should be made the border. So and at that time, there were statements coming out from these small regions, from Doda, Kishtwar, these small political groups, and they were saying, who decided that we are going to be with Jammu? Who said this? And then at the end, there were only 2.5 districts who were ready to, in a way, like in this whole debate, you can see that they were ready to go with the Jammu division. And then there are statements given by Mirwais Umar Farooq who is saying that if the state divides, that we will let these 2.5 districts go. And that was Jammu, Patwa and half of Samba.
Thank you. Sorry, I'll take you and then I'll move on to the next, the last speaker as well. Because we want to have a sort of final discussion really. So,
in your discussion, like just now, you mentioned how some groups want to be with India, but there are Muslims in say Kargil who want to be with Jammu. But like there are descriptions of Kashmir that like they aren't just Muslims in Jammu. There are a lot of groups of people. It's not just Muslims being oppressed here. There are other groups being oppressed. So I just wanted to, because like, is it just Muslims that are fighting for, fighting with resistance for Kashmir to be independent, and do other groups not want that, or is it like, is there oppression towards other people as well, and is it more kind of homogenous between Jammu people?
Yeah. If we look at the valley, there are 6 in valley. There is a big community of 6, and if you will see their track, in 2010 they supported the strike, in 2008 they supported the strike, and they have been part of the movement in a lot of ways. They haven't left Kashmir. When there is a strike, they take part in it. But it can't be that obvious. Of course, there are Muslims on the roads mostly. They throw stones and everything. And of course, it's mostly Muslim majority-led movement, because in the valley you have the Muslim majority. In Jammu, it will be mostly Muslims. But then there are these small groups and small sections of minorities who have taken part in protests and who have been part and parcel of the movement. And they, you can see from the reportings and others that the Sikhs have shown their support in media towards the resistance leaders and the movements all the time. It's not about just, that's why I'm saying this scenario is changing. The way it was in 90s, it's not the same way. The way the pundits are saying we were thrown out in 90s, it's not the same way in today in 2014. It's a different scenario now. People are saying that pundits come back. People are living happily with Sikhs. They are not Muslims. They are living with side by side.